This is an example of a background insertion. You can see that we've taken a clip. In this case, it is this particular clip here. Oops. You'll notice that it's just a standard green screen, but with some trackers in the background. We're going to use those trackers to allow us to attach the brick wall into the background so that we end up with the brick wall moving with the movement of the camera. So in the other 2-point track, we were following his hands because we wanted to insert some text. Now we actually want to use the trackers to follow the movement of the camera. So when the camera moves, the track points move, and then we can use those as the basis of our background insertion. Now there's a few extra steps that we have masks and stuff as well, because we are dealing with a green screen and there's a lot of garbage around the left and right we need to get rid of. But the beauty of this approach is that we can actually automate the process of rotoscoping that mask so that it follows him, keeps him visible, keeps all of the junk hidden. So this is what we're using the mask for. Okay, so we'll go through the steps, and we're dealing with this particular clip here. So we don't do any green screen until our tracking is done, and our tracking is going to be based on these 2 track points here. So because we're doing a 2-point track, we select the layer, track motion, select rotation and scale, and then we'll zoom in just to grab those, and we're just going to do it on the little crosses. So it's just electrical tape, and these give us a nice defined feature. They don't have to be crosses. Again, I mean, you'll find a lot of the time just a small circle or just a little rectangle of tape will do the job just as well. Okay, so our search region, our feature region is set up. We go in, we're going to call this track camera movement. Luminance, yes. Adapt feature, yes. Stop tracking, all of that stuff is the same every time we do it. So we have our trackers lined up, so now we can just hit track forward. Because there's not that much movement in the shot, there isn't a lot of motion blur, and we should be okay for an automated an automated analysis and a track. Pause this and unpause it just as it gets to the end of the track. Okay, so we'll zoom out. Everything stayed where it needed to be, so we can go out here now. We can start building what we need on the timeline. First things first, always get a null object. Time saver, and helps us to be more flexible with our workflow. We edit the target, select the null, and apply that. So now we have our null object attached always to tracker 1, and that is doing its thing. Okay, so we bring down our brick wall and pop it on top first so we can have a look. It's quite small, so I'm going to scale it up. Now, this is important. If your camera is moving around, then obviously you can't just scale it up to the size of your composition, because it's going to, you're going to lose it as it starts to move around. Okay, so if I just quickly parent that just to demonstrate. So I have it parented to the null, and you'll see now that it almost straight away it starts to get lost. So you need to counter in or factor in all of the parts of the frame that are going to become visible. So you need to be pretty big, and you can kind of change this with your eye, trial and error, once you get going. Okay, so it's probably a little bit too big. Let's get it down just a tiny bit. Just make sure it doesn't clip it at any point. Okay, that's fine. Now, the next thing we're going to do is I'll just push that down to the bottom because it's going to be revealed behind our guy. And I'm going to do the usual keying. So we go into our keying, key light, screen color, and we go into our screen matte. It's not as dense as we might like it, so I'll just bump up the gain on the screen and then do a tiny touch of clip and roll here, just to get it nice and dense. Now, again, we don't need to worry about this. We don't need to worry about this or these or any of that stuff, because we're going to be able to automate a rotoscope, track a mask into our shot. So currently, it's almost done. So what do? We can use a mask and a track matte, and that's done by creating a solid. Again, we need it to be pretty much the same size as our brick wall because it's going to move around. And you want to resize it before you start drawing your mask, because if you try to resize it afterwards, it will also resize the mask. Switch that off because we don't need to see it. And we get our pen tool, and because he's static, I can draw a mask pretty tight around him. Now here's the thing, you need to go down below here because we know that the camera kind of tilts up a little bit, or tilts down rather, and reveals his legs, and we don't want the bottom of the mask to clip out and him to look like he's floating in midair. So we have our mask drawn. All we need to do now is parent the solid to the null, and that will also move with the track. Last thing we need to do now is just select our track matte. So we want to take the mask information from our red solid, rename that DRK for track matte, and I'm going to pass that mask down onto our green screen layer. So this is not parenting. Parenting's over here. Whoops. This is our track matte pick whip, which I can click and drag, pull up there. As soon as I do, see all of the junk goes away. We're left with our nicely tracked wall. Now, all I did from here on in was put a blur on it, get some curves, darken it so that it looks like he's in a little bit more of a spotlight. And that is pretty much it. So it's all about following that null, tracking things in, and making them do whatever job they need to do, be it a mask or actually have the background move with the camera.